Hi, welcome to Nonprofit Narratives. Thank you first to the Stellar Family Foundation for hosting this series. Today, my name is Elsa Dimitriadis. I'm the Executive Director of the Acadiana Regional Coalition on Homelessness and Housing, and I'm joined by my dear friend and coworker, Kara Baque, who's the Director of Finance and Administration. So,
Hi.
thank you so much for doing this today.
Thank you.
So can you start just talking a little bit about what your role is and maybe a little bit about your background?
So my role at ARCH is the Director of Finance and Administration. And about 4 years ago, when I left my corporate job, I got a phone call from a dear friend who said, "Hey, would you like to come and work part-time as our bookkeeper? We could use a little help." And I said, sure. And I came in, and eventually my role expanded. And before I knew it, I was working for ARCH full time and loving the organization, loving what we do, and loving the people that I work with. I have a bit of a financial background in that I did finally finish my degree in my mid-40s. So I have a degree in accounting. And then I took and passed all 4 of the CPA exams. So I feel like I have a good background and a good head for numbers. And so I've been doing the bookkeeping at ARCH for 4 years now. And to expand a little bit on that, I also am the Director of Administration, which means that I answer the phones, I handle compliance issues as far as HR, little payroll, insurance, just anything that needs doing in an administrative capacity, I sort of try to take care of. And I enjoy the work.
And, we as the lead agency for our 8 parish, we call it continuum of care, right, are dealing with a lot of funds that come down federally and from the state. And we also are a pass-through agency for other agencies. So I imagine your work also is a lot about compliance and...
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have several reimbursement grants, which is where we are granted a certain amount of money. We spend that money, and then we turn in a big invoice that says, here's all the money that we spent, please reimburse us. So we have to be very strict about how we spend the funds, and then we have to be very strict about how we turn in those funds with proof that these funds were actually expended this way, and cross all the T's, dot all the I's, and make sure everything works. And so I do that and make sure we're in compliance. And then also I, cut all the checks for our sub-grantees. And so we have our COC manager who takes the invoices from our sub-grantees, make sure that they have complied with the way they're supposed to spend the money, and then turns them in. We get reimbursed, and we have to turn that money into those agencies. And so it's a lot of pass-throughs. We keep track of a lot of financial information. We make sure that we're doing everything by the book. And it's a lot of keeping things in order and organization and systems, which I really, really am drawn to and really enjoy the almost the rigidness of it. I enjoy that.
Yeah. I had a mentor once that said that a dollar that someone gives you is a dollar of trust. And so I always think about that, either whether it's a donor or it's tax dollars or it's a philanthropic gift.
Yes, we absolutely have to be impeccable with our integrity and how we use those funds.
Right. Well, you mentioned that you answer the phones, and I think that would probably be the most interesting to people who might be watching today. So, you're the first voice that people hear when they need help. Mm-hmm. So can you talk a little bit about what are the types of calls that we receive most often, and what do people think ARCH does? Because I know that there's, we've been around since the mid-90s, but I think really in the public view in the last 6 or 7 years.
Correct. So basically, since we have started the housing navigation program about 1.5 years ago, most of the calls that come in are people who are looking for that particular program. So these are individuals who are not necessarily experiencing homelessness yet.
Okay.
They are on the brink because they've had some sort of incident in their life that has led them to a place where they might be housing unstable very shortly. It could be a short illness. It could be a loss of a loved one. It can be that the rent has gone up and they're unable to afford it. It could be any manner of things. Just one little thing has happened and now they're on the verge of losing their housing. So I get a lot of people who are on the cusp of crisis. They are looking for housing other than where they are because they're either about to get evicted or they can no longer afford it, or like I said, some loss, some incident has happened. And so I do a short intake of those individuals, and I put them on our board, and then a case manager takes it from there. A lot of the misconceptions about what ARCH does is there are people who think that we actually own the housing. So they think that we're leasing properties and that, hey, do you have a property? And I can't answer those questions because I'm not a case manager and we do not actually own the housing.
Right.
So I can't say, oh, yeah, there's 3 units available. That's not the way that it works with us. Another popular misconception is that we provide either rental assistance or deposit assistance because it harkens back to COVID times when we did run programs that did help with deposits and rental assistance. And we no longer have those programs. Other agencies, have those programs. And so that becomes a referral basis. I think what is interesting the most about the phone calls is that it's never just one question. It's always, hi, my name is so-and-so, and here is my whole story.
Right.
Because people want you to know that what they have experienced is leading to them to this particular event, and that they are scared, they are worried, and can you please help me?
Right.
And so I oftentimes spend a great deal of time on the phone with people who I'll probably never interact with again because they're handed over to case managers. And so that's probably the most interesting part is a lot of similar stories, but a lot of varied stories. It sort of just depends. But a lot of people will tell you their whole story.
What is a common theme that you've seen, let's say, over the last 3 to 6 months? Are there similar stories that keep bubbling to the surface?
Yeah. The biggest thing that I see when I answer the phones is that people they have been priced out of the market for housing. It's a lot of people who are working and they are right on the line of poverty. So they're not making enough to meet the rent that they currently have, and they need to get other housing. And there's just a very big lack of affordable housing in the area. So it's very hard to place people who, say, for instance, only have a disability income. That's less than $1,000 a month for people who are, disabled and unable to work. So that is not going to go very far towards housing, especially if you're a single individual who is the only income for that household. So that seems to be the common theme.
We talk about being severely cost burdened, being, more than 50% of your income. But when you're talking about disability at $1,000, there's not even a phrase that we've created to mean more than severely cost burdened.
Correct.
I mean, it means experiencing homelessness eventually.
Correct. And increasingly, property owners are asking their tenants to make 2.5 to 3 times the rent. So a $500 apartment, which, almost non-existent, you would need to make $1,500 a month in order to be able to even be approved for that apartment, much less be able to afford it.
Can you talk about, are there calls that just stay with you?
100%. A lot of the calls are very similar in that people have experienced 1 or 2 incidents that have led to their situation. It's they've been living on the poverty line and something small has happened that has tumbled them into not being able to potentially remain housed. But every now and again, you get a call from someone who has experienced 10 or 12 things that have happened and the traumas, and we're talking about a lifetime of trauma that some of these individuals have had, and they're in dire straits, desperate positions, and you just can't help but wonder how they're even standing, much less being able to make a phone call and ask for help, because life has not been good to them in any way, shape, or form, and they've experienced a lot of hardships.
Yeah.
And those calls stick with me.
And, I think we think a lot about the desperation and the fear, but people are brave when they call us. I mean,
Absolutely.
they're brave to have gotten where they are through everything and then still have the faith that there's something out there that...
Well, and it's extremely humbling to reach out and ask for help, especially when there's a common myth or bias that people who are experiencing homelessness are somehow it's through their own fault.
Right.
And so it's even harder to ask for help when you're in that situation. So I'm quite surprised that some people are even functioning at all.
Yeah. I know the ones for me that stay with me are when people feel like they made all the right choices, right? They did all the right things and still they're needing to call an agency for help.
Right. Yeah. They had the job, they lived the life, they raised the kids, and that is another increasing genre that I'm seeing, is people who are elderly, who are all alone. They've lost a spouse, or they don't have children nearby, or their children don't have resources to help them, and they cannot live on their own with the amount of Social Security they received. Even though they've worked their whole lives, right? They're not able to afford rent.
Today, we're here from the Acadiana Regional Coalition on Homelessness and Housing, and I have Kara Bakke, our Director of Finance Administration, with me. We will be back after a brief message.
Looking to grow your nonprofit's impact? Join AOC Community Media for Nonprofit Nourish, a quarterly meetup designed to connect, empower, and elevate local changemakers. Each session features expert-led workshops, free headshots, PSA recordings, and a light lunch, all at no cost. Topics rotate quarterly, spotlighting a range of areas including storytelling, media strategy, and community outreach. Space is limited. Register now at aocinc.org/nonprofit, and let's nourish the good together. Whether you're just starting out or leading a seasoned organization, there's a seat at the table for you. Let's build a stronger, more connected nonprofit community, one story at a time. Acadiana nonprofits are the heartbeat of our community, and Nonprofit Narratives brings their stories to life. Produced by AOC Community Media, this half-hour series showcases local organizations, highlighting their missions, impacts, and the people they serve. From youth mentorships to environmental advocacy, each episode celebrates the voices driving change across Acadiana. Tune in to AOC Channels 1 and 2, stream at aocinc.org/watch, and download AOC's streaming app found on most streaming platforms. Real stories, local heroes. This is Nonprofit Narratives.
Thank you for joining us. Again, thank you to the Stellar Family Foundation for having sponsored Nonprofit Narratives. My name is Elsa Dimitriadis. I'm with the Acadiana Regional Coalition on Homelessness and Housing, and I have today our Director of Finance and Administration, Kara Bakke. So, I think that myth busting is one of the most important parts around our work, right? There are a lot of common misconceptions, and I just want to kind of maybe throw a couple out there and see what your thoughts are about it. I think the first is, why don't they just get a job?
Well, surprisingly enough, having a job does not guarantee housing.
Yeah.
Because if you're working at a minimum wage job, you do not make enough money to support yourself in a rental property. That is all there is to it. Bottom line, there's no wiggle room on that.
Right.
It has been, I think you know the statistics more than I
It's
do.
2.5 full-time jobs at minimum wage to afford. So here is Lafayette.
Correct. And that is, so 2.5 times is not even double income. If you have 2 people working full-time at minimum wage jobs, then they are still not able to afford a 1-bedroom apartment in the city of Lafayette.
Right.
That's all there is to it. And that is the biggest misconception and the biggest problem. The lack of affordable housing, and it doesn't matter how much you work, sometimes you are not able to afford it.
How about, well, there's lots of homeless resources out there. Why don't they just, there's plenty of agencies, they're well-funded, why don't they go and access those resources?
Well, unfortunately, while there are agencies that are funded and there are resources, there simply aren't enough for the people who are experiencing homelessness, which when you think about it is a very small portion of any given population, but still there are not enough funds available to have everyone be housed and get the resources that they need in order to maintain that housing.
Right. I know you and I were talking yesterday just casually about how when we're in this work for a long period of time, our lens, it focuses on this particular population that we're working with, to the point that we're like, oh my goodness, like what's happening across
everyone homeless?
That's right. Is everyone homeless? Is everyone accessing disability? Is everyone on Social Security? But when we really zoom it out, I really appreciated that statistic that you shared yesterday that, for example, 2% of the population collect disability.
Right, which is such a small portion of the population.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure about homelessness rates, but it's probably somewhere similar to that as well.
Absolutely.
Or even less.
Yes.
Because, you think about the city of Lafayette, how many people we house, and we know that we have about 200.
It's 200
on the street.
210 or 205 street level unsheltered.
Yes, correct. And then there are some who are in transitional housing and other
Emergency shelter.
government programs. But yeah, I think that's another.
And I think also, some people just want to be homeless. I think we hear that a lot.
We do.
And it's hard.
It is because I think that we are looking at it through the lens of people who have had a relatively normal life. We have had, not a lot of trauma, not a lot of incidents. We haven't grown up in poverty. And so whenever we look at the lens of the traumas that these people have experienced and the hardships they have experienced, we've known that people who grew up in households that experienced homeless are more likely, if they were kids, are more likely to experience homeless as an adult.
Yeah.
And so we see that happening and recurring. And I think that a lot of times when people don't want help, which is rare, but we do reach out, sometimes it takes a while to gain their trust.
Yeah.
Because they have been hurt by the system. They've been hurt by people. They have been treated with a lot less dignity and respect than anyone else. It's really terrible. And so they're hurt.
Yeah.
And the homelessness has added additional trauma to them. And it's just a matter of them being let down by the system and let down by people and not being able to trust that resources are actually available and that they can access them in a way that would help them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that something that I know we keep in the forefront is the idea that no one as a child says, when I grow up, I want to experience homelessness, right? So we have to figure out what the why is when people turn resources down.
Right, and sometimes it's just a matter of self-protection.
Yeah.
That they'd rather not reach out for help or would rather not take help from someone they don't trust.
So, let's talk a little bit, because I want people to understand the process of what happens. So someone is about to lose their housing. And so what happens next? They call ARCH, the main line. And then what?
A lot of times they actually call 232-HELP.
Okay.
And then they are given our phone number with them. And then they call and they say, hi, I was referred by 232-HELP. I'm about to lose housing. I'm about to be evicted. What's the next step? And so my role is actually very small in that I do the intake. I get a name, a phone number, and just a tiny bit of information about how many people would be in their household. And then I put it on our board and a case manager takes it from there. And that's actually one of the hard parts, is because I never know what happens to these people. I never know if they're able to actually access services and if we're actually able to be successful in housing them. I hear every now and again in the background,
Right.
like, I posted something, a staff meeting, whatever. But, I hear all the stories and I don't always get a chance to hear all of the outcomes.
And I think it's important to remember that you are not asking their entire life story, because we don't want to re-traumatize people.
Absolutely.
Because that case manager is going to have to ask all those same questions again, right? And I tell people, you don't owe people your story. You owe them the information that they need in order to give them give you the resources that they need.
And my job is just to listen and to hear anything that they're willing to tell me and treat that with compassion and openness, and record the information as necessary and pass it on to case managers.
So I know you talked about our housing navigation program. Can you talk a little bit about some of the other services that we have at ARCH?
So we also have a SOAR program, which is basically where we have an employee that aids people in applying for disability, because that is a very complicated process, especially for people who are experiencing mental health issues. So for anyone experiencing, their schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, these different kinds of severe mental illnesses, our person on staff is able to help them apply for disability, which can hopefully give them just a little bit of income so that they can, maybe work their way into housing.
And it's a really bureaucratic process.
It is. It's a lot of paperwork. It's a lot of paper.
Yeah.
It's a lot of paperwork, and it's a lot of making phone calls and really sort of staying on top of the situation, which people who are experiencing severe mental health disorders simply can't do that.
Right. And thankfully, we have a staff member who is dogged in her approach to this work.
Never want to go up against Carla.
Right. And then do you want to talk a little bit about Share House?
Yes. So Share House is where we accept slightly used household items in order to create packages for people who are moving from homelessness to housing. So if someone is literally coming off the street, they have very few possessions. They don't have furniture. They don't have dishes. They don't have small appliances. And so we hopefully can provide those items for them whenever they move into their new home, and so that they aren't cost burdened immediately with those things that are needed.
Right.
Beds are a huge item.
Yeah, we know that, effective sleep is so important to getting out of that crisis thinking.
Absolutely.
And being able to attain the goals that you want once housing is provided.
And everyone deserves the dignity of a bed to sleep in.
Absolutely. So, there's so much that we're doing. I know later today we have a renter readiness course that we offer that's free of charge. And we have a number of services that we offer that can be accessed by archacadiana.org, our website.
Yes.
But, before we wrap up, can you talk about what gives you hope? This is work that can be discouraging, I imagine.
Yeah.
And so what gives you hope?
What gives me hope is the spreading of information, because I think we all grow up in a certain way where we have certain biases, especially if you grow up, middle class, that we have the biases that homelessness is by someone's own choice or someone's own mistakes or someone's own, and through information, we're able to learn that, no, that's not the case. There are people who just, no matter how hard they try, don't make enough money or don't have resources. They don't have family. So I think that's the biggest thing. And that's what gives me hope, is that the more information is out there, the more we learn about what causes homelessness. And there are many things that cause homelessness, that we can slowly build systems that can help to solve that problem. So that gives me hope.
So if someone's watching today, how would you suggest that they plug in? Like, what's one thing that somebody can do, or a couple things that somebody could do in order to jump in and be part of the solution?
I think stay informed is huge. I would like to know what you would think about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We have the ARCH General Meeting on the fourth Thursday of every month, and it is online. And we also have the recordings from those meetings on our ARCH page, and so on our ARCH website. And so people can always get informed. I think Share House, if people wanted to donate directly to Share House, if you're doing a clean out over the summer. And I think also, donations of time or money. I tell people if they're comfortable giving directly to someone in need, do that. If they'd rather go through a nonprofit, do that. And then tell me.
The outreach map.
Yes.
On our website, archacadiana.org, ARCH, acadiana.org, we have an outreach map where you can click, and if you see someone experiencing homelessness, you can go on the map and report where you've seen them. And that helps our agencies actually go out and make contact with these individuals.
Yes.
Because like I said before, some of them are not trusting. They're very leery of the system. So that helps us to make connections and go and find people and bring them small resources where they are.
Right.
And
And
so
start meeting them, start that process of moving people from homelessness to housing.
Absolutely.
Well, I really thank you for doing this today. It's, easy for us because we've known each other for a long, long time. And I'm so glad that you're on our team. And for those of you who are watching, I thank you. Please get involved, however is most appropriate and is the best fit for you. There's always a way. And I want to thank again the Stellar Family Foundation for sponsoring nonprofit narratives so that we can share the work with you that we do every day. So again, thank you, and we'll be back after a brief message.